Hello and welcome, everyone. I might be a new face for some of you that are avid followers of everything that Afar Media puts out, but my name is Dandashy. I am a travel expert behind the brand Ask A Concierge. A little bit of my backstory so that you have a better understanding and idea of who I am. I actually worked in the luxury hospitality space for nearly 20 years. I ended up as a hotel concierge, by the way, and I ended up creating my brand Ask A Concierge, and I create travel content. So I am definitely a travel content creator through the lens of somebody that has lived in the travel and hospitality space. I also like to say that in my DNA, travel is in my DNA. I am half Lebanese, and I actually grew up in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, London, England, Atlanta, Georgia, Washington, D.C., New York, and I now currently reside in Los Angeles. So that's a little bit of my backstory. I'm really excited about today's discussion because today we will be talking with Sascha Mayerer, who is the CEO of Historic Highlights of Germany. Now, for those that might not know, Historic Highlights of Germany represents 17 smaller, yet very historically significant and cultural heritage cities throughout Germany. And personally, I actually had the opportunity to visit 4 of these beautiful cities just in October of this past year: Rostock, Potsdam, Erfurt, and Würzburg. So, and I'm still working on my German. But with that being said, I want to introduce who I'll be speaking with. So Sascha, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And I'd love to have this conversation hearing a little bit more from your side and then as my side as well too. But for those that are joining in and might not know you, could you share a little bit of your background and introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Sarah, for introducing me a little bit already. My name is Sascha, and before I do that, I really want to thank you for having me, actually, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And coming back to my personality and who I am, my name is Sascha Mayerer. I'm the CEO of Historic Highlights of Germany. As Sarah already pointed out, 17 historic German cities off the beaten track. You've visited 4 of them, actually, as you already told the audience. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And yeah, we are an association, a membership association that has 17 members all over Germany, from Rostock at the Baltic Sea that you visited and experienced the Baltic Sea, down to the Black Forest, Freiburg, and all scattered all over Germany, from the rivers to the mountains. It's just a great mix of cities, of smaller cities, as you pointed out. It's not the big ones like Berlin and Munich, but the really small ones where I always say Germany happens.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And I have to say, after being there, I completely agree. Certainly we all have ideas of what it's like to visit Germany. Certainly we also know a lot of the bigger name cities, but when you get to go explore some of these very culturally relevant cities and historically, I mean, that they're so rich in history, you really you experience, I think, what feels like the real Germany. And so
oh yeah, they are. Sorry, but it's just like it's really that. It's just like it's Germany, and they have at least 700 years of history. They are so easy to access and so beautiful, and you can do so much there. It's just great to present these cities to the world.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I can hear the passion in it, and I absolutely get it. So a little bit of backstory, by the way, for those that are watching and tuning in. Actually, Sascha and I did get to meet, so we are familiar faces. And he met me in my last destination in Würzburg, and I have to say, it was such an incredible experience. And it was so nice to kind of meet you at the end after kind of visiting all these different cities, and I think really like capping off what for me was, I mean, probably it is my most memorable trip to Germany I've ever had. And I mean, I was just blown away. For those that were tuning in and watching the social media posts, you can definitely, I'm sure you could pick up and read my excitement as I was living it in person as well too. So, but actually, Sascha, we had talked about this in person, and I think this would be actually a really interesting thing to just touch on before we dive into some of the questions. So you represent, these 17 cities. What are the characteristics, or what are the qualities, or whether the requirements that maybe a city might have to be represented under historic highlights?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah, and as I started talking earlier, it's just like there are several criteria they have to fulfill to be a member of this membership association. So we don't have the big ones, as I said, like Berlin and Munich. We are the smaller ones. So we are between 100,000 and 400,000 inhabitants. So neither too big nor too small. They are walkable, easy accessible. With easy accessible, I also mean they are easy accessible by train, because all have to be connected to the high-speed rail network by the German rail. And we probably talk about that later on too. You've experienced the German rail system too. It's very convenient. You get very fast to every destination you want to be in Germany. They have to have at least 700 years of history. I pointed that out earlier too. There is a lot to see and do, but nevertheless, we do have that much history. We also do have a great culture and lifestyle culture there, because they are all university towns, most of them the oldest universities in Germany, like Heidelberg with the oldest university from the 14th century. And it's very, very great to be in these cities. You do have the culture, you do have the history, but you also do have the lifestyle in the evening. If you are a party person, you can even go partying in the evening if you want to. So it's not just going to museums and seeing like old stones or something. It's just really, really being in this destination and living and experience it with the locals in these destinations.
I love that. And I can't agree more. It really is a rounded out experience, but I love, what you kind of mentioned is the actual size of the cities, and they are also all tied with being sort of university cities as well too. I think that's really important, so that people understand that it, again, as you mentioned, it's not just, cities just rich in history, although that is definitely very, it is a huge aspect and a huge draw for individuals, but there is more going on, and they are very vibrant in each of their own ways. And so I love, that's why I wanted you to share a little bit more detail, because I asked you that in person, and I thought that was really fascinating. So I'd love to, continue this discussion here. So before the pandemic, we already were seeing many travelers were kind of seeking places maybe off the beaten path, but lesser known destinations, but also, equally very special destinations. And I think the pandemic really heightened this interest in exploring smaller cities that are really easy to navigate, on foot, being outdoors. Would you say that you saw the same?
Yes, I actually saw the same. It's not like that we are overcrowded now. We do get more tourists now, and I've talked to several big tour companies, and they told me, okay, when we have just been before the pandemic, like 3 to 4 days in bigger cities, we reduced that time that we spend in the bigger cities to also go to the smaller destinations, like my destinations. So that's a really positive effect, actually, that the pandemic had on my destinations. Although it's still like there are not so many people still able to travel. We know that it's not like the whole world is traveling like in 2019 or 2018. So, but we see an uptick in arrivals and overnight stays in our destinations, because we are a little bit more off the beaten track, not the known destinations in Germany. So yeah, we do see a bit coming more and more to our side of the overnight stays within Germany, and that's a really positive effect that I can see for my cities.
Definitely. Well, and I agree with you, because that's also one of the things that I do myself, is I really study, sort of travelers trends, consumer trends when it comes to the travel industry. And we've absolutely seen travelers seeking out the, places with space, maybe being outside of the big cities. And this has been a really interesting transition. And I think certainly in what I experienced in your cities, is that they lend themselves so perfect to what travelers are looking for right now. So, I didn't need a car in any city. I walked around everywhere, and they were very easy to navigate. Some days, okay, yes, I did a lot of miles, but it was so worth it, and it meant that I could eat that much more and enjoy that much more. So definitely not complaining.
Yeah.
but they are so easy to navigate. And I think that when you can explore a destination on foot, you can touch and feel it so much more than
Oh,
from being
definitely.
in a car.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. It's just like in my cities, you can see that much, but then it's also a very dense old town where you can walk from one side to the other and still are in awe because you see all this stuff and all this these old churches, and then sit down for a cappuccino on the main square and all that stuff. It's just so beautiful to be in these cities. And we have, of course, we do have these cobblestone streets everywhere, and I'm always telling everyone, be careful. It's not for every shoe you have in your luggage. But yeah, walking through these cities, also take your time walking through these cities. And I think that's also an aspect of my cities. You can take your time, walk through these cities. You don't have to rush through these cities. And as you can see with the locals too, usually when you are in bigger cities, people are in a rush usually. And when you are in these smaller destinations, people are more in a slow lifestyle. They walk through the, or did you say through the farmer's market, over the farmer's market to get through perfect through the farmer's market to find groceries they like. And I think that's really something nice you can experience in these destinations, in these smaller destinations. And again, if you feel that there are too many people in there for small destinations, it's easy to also go outside of the city and to experience maybe what I did together with you on your last day when you've been in Würzburg. Just go outside of these destinations and see the surroundings. Go to the woods, go to the what do you call that, to the vineyards.
Yes.
And and experience that too, because there are not that many people, and you find hidden gems in these outside destinations of my cities as well. Yeah.
Well, you just said so many things that I actually want to talk about. So first of all, you're talking about, I personally love that the pace of things has seemed to slow down. We all, in essence, the world kind of came to a little bit of a pause, so to speak, and it allowed a lot of us to reflect and look at travel in a very different way. Something that's a bit more thoughtful. One of my favorite words to say when it comes to travel. Slowing down. And you mentioned that your destinations lend themselves so naturally for this, allowing for longer trips. You can really walk through the destinations, and it allows people to have this deeper dive and savor the experience, really like take in that history. And I mean, your destinations really, again, lend themselves to what we're seeing travelers are wanting to do. And to me, it's very exciting that we're kind of in this new space.
It definitely is, and that's what we are trying to do. We call it, for our association, we call it meaningful travel, to be able to do something meaningful for yourself, but also meaningful for the destination and for the people you're surrounded by. I think that is something that the pandemic really taught us, to go maybe a little bit slower, to take care of ourselves, to take care of our surroundings. And I think that is something that you can easily do in smaller destinations than in big destinations too.
Absolutely. And again, being able to kind of, do everything on foot. Obviously, there are some places that again, as you mentioned, like the vineyards, that you can or via car, but it just, the whole pace of everything changes. And again, you just experience it in such a different way than in the hustle and bustle of the big city. So yes. Okay. I want to talk about history. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Historic highlights of Germany.
It's called Historic Highlights of Germany, right?
History up your life, by the way, which I love. We can't forget about the history. So, and there's something to be said, and I will definitely say this from my experience. When I was there, and I'm all of a sudden I'm walking through a monastery, and I'm like, what these walls have seen, or I'm walking through some of the different rooms in Sanssouci Palace in Potsdam. I mean, it really brings it to life. I mean, by the way, the monastery, for a frame of reference, it's where Martin Luther began his theological studies. I mean, that's huge. That was in Erfurt, which is one of the cities that I got to visit. And then Frederick the Great, Sanssouci Palace, imagining all the activities and everything that was happening in the grandeur of that palace. I wish I was invited to one of those parties. But I mean, so here's the thing. So for history fans, this is a no-brainer. Absolutely all of these destinations. But for those that might not be maybe motivated by history until they get there and experience it themselves, how might travelers maybe open their minds to exploring or being, turned on a bit by history in your cities?
I think an easy way to do this actually is, on the one hand side, either to experience at your own pace. There we are at the pace again, to really go slowly and try to understand what's happening there. But on the other hand side, maybe get a guide from a destination. I think this is something, because they are able to get to know you, and you can get to know them, and then they will see, okay, how much do you already know, and how far can I go, which directions can I walk through the destination or through the city that I'm visiting, that you get a really good experience there. But on the other hand side, there are, like you've been to Sanssouci, also a place where I'm from, Trier, where I'm living at, 2000 years of history actually, founded by the Romans, so there's so much to see and do. A very easy aspect that you can do, or how you can experience it, is through an actor that is taking you through these destinations, or a special structure like the Porta Nigra in Trier. That's the Black Gate, and it got black over time because it is limestone that was inhabited by moss and everything. So yeah, and with an actor, I think it's very easy to get to know history and to understand it much easier than just by numbers. Okay, this building was built 1705 or something. That there's really also a history behind these walls that people can experience. And I think that's also something, tell the story behind the story, or tell the story behind history. I think that's a very easy way to get to know history, and to get to know a structure, or a palace, a castle, and so on, a church.
Well, that by the way, I love that, because I did not have an actor, but I have to say, when you're talking about this, it absolutely, it brings to life the history of the city. But I did have tour guides, and I love that you mentioned that at the beginning, because there is something to be said for having a really good tour guide, because they quickly get to know you, kind of sense out what you're interested in, and maybe what will kind of like pique your interest a little bit more. And I have to say that every city that I had a tour guide in, they made the experience for me, and they were phenomenal tour guides, and they helped bring it to life, the history. That as I was walking around, I'm like, oh wow, it just I mean, I would take a moment after the tour to be like, wow, what did I just experience, in a great way. It was like down the information, really incredible. So I agree. Definitely do a tour guide. And then if you're looking for something a little bit more, unique or interactive, I love the idea of sort of like an actor.
And then again, also with the local guides, they are locals, so they know their city by heart. So, and it's like, if and they know how life works in these destinations. And I think, aside the history, it's also, people want to know how people live in these destinations, and how you can maybe be a part of that too. And I think with having someone that is guiding you through a destination and is also a local, I think that's a great idea of being able to really get to know a destination.
Oh, complete. Well, I mean, you are talking to a former concierge here.
Yeah, right.
So I'm always a fan of, and it doesn't have to be a concierge, but it's always tapping into the local experience by speaking to a local, because they know it best. They know what's for them. They know what their friends do. They also know what maybe other visitors to the city really kind of are are infatuated with or like
Right.
interested
Yeah.
in. So it's really cool to have that sort of like local perspective. So definitely agree with you on that.
And even if you are there for the second time, maybe like there are destinations in my portfolio that people have been to, and maybe people want to go again. They can take you not only on, let's put it, a tourist route, the things you have to see in a destination or should see in a destination, like the top 3, top 5, top 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
They can even take you off the beaten track and off the beaten track destinations. Because
off the beaten track, around the corner, all of that.
yeah, right. And it's and this is also something we don't only have these known like Heidelberg, for example. People know Heidelberg either from being there or having heard about it. And it's not just the castle. There is so much more to see and experience in Heidelberg than just the castle atop the hill overlooking this beautiful city. There is much more to Heidelberg than just this. So yeah,
Which,
and
by the way,
local guides can take you there.
yes. And by the way, we do have to touch on Heidelberg because
Sure.
this was really interesting. I love that they, are one of your cities. And I had just done my DNA testing right before coming to Germany and spoke with my grandparents who are from Pennsylvania, but we actually are able to trace back people in our family to Heidelberg. So I thought that was so
wow, cool.
It was not on my list this time, but I'm definitely coming back so I can experience that because I think that that'll be really just amazing.
Oh yeah, probably. And that's again because so many people emigrated through the north of Germany to the States. There is so much to see and do if you are looking for relatives, former relatives and forefathers and so on in Germany. It's so easy to do and then experience where they came from. I think that's something special too.
Oh, completely. And talk about bringing history to life when you really are able to kind of look at the family tree. That's next level. So right. I love that. Okay, let's talk about food because
food, yes, of course.
So I mean, we have that's part of the joy of travel. So interesting, and I wanted to share a bit of my experience with this. So not many, I don't overly advertise it, but I am a vegetarian. And I just to give you a bit of my experience, when we think of Germany, we think, okay, we've got bratwurst and like all of this, and it's like it's meats and all of like meats, beer, pretzels, etc. Although I'm definitely pretzels very vegetarian friendly, but I have to say, for me being vegetarian, it was so easy to always find something, and even if it might not have been maybe a traditional dish. There were lots of options, but also speaking of traditional dishes, I actually was able to try, different dishes, maybe like dumplings, for example, that are normally served with meat, that they had options for vegetarians. So I think that that's also another thing that's really important to mention. Just because you might be outside of a larger metropolitan city, if you do have dietary preferences or, restrictions, you can absolutely accommodate that in all of these destinations. So that being said, Sascha, are there some favorite local dishes that you think travelers should definitely add to their list? Maybe seasonal or regional specialties?
Let's put it that way. Germany is a huge country, from north to west, from east to south. We have so many regional delicious specialities that you can try in these different areas of Germany. At the moment, we are at winter time, and winter in northern Germany usually means kale. People love kale during winter, not as much. Let's put it differently. They cook it. It's not like here where you usually in the States get it as a salad or something like raw. It's really cooked for several hours to really soften it, and that it's really tender, easy to eat. But usually you get it with meat. But you can leave the meat aside and then just have it with potatoes.
Yes.
That's really good. If you go south, like in let's take Augsburg, for example. At the moment, the Christmas markets we know are not taking place all over Germany, but usually, and if you still go to Augsburg, which is very close to Munich, you get a special kind of bread which is produced during Christmas
Oh,
time. It's
wow.
called the Hutzelbrot. It's a very funny name, but it's more. I would describe it as a stolen, but just a bread that looks like a stolen and is eaten like a bread, but just a sweet bread.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is something. Or if you go, or you've experienced that too in Erfurt, the dumplings, which are amazing. They are like this huge. These
They're huge.
dumplings.
They're
I
huge.
know, right? And you can get them either with meat or as a vegetarian option. It's so great that in every destination you can. Of course, you do have the bratwurst and you do have the sauerkraut and all of that you know about German food culture. But then in each destination, you have a special meal that you usually can only get there. And going back to this, what we've talked about earlier as well, these destinations are representing a region as well. It's really like if you go to these destinations, you will experience a different culture. You will experience a different food culture. It's so different in every single one of these 17 destinations that you can easily, deep dive into a local culture and not really of course it's German culture, but then again, it's a local German culture. Let's put it that way.
And interestingly enough, so I actually had dumplings in two different places. So I had dumplings in Erfurt, and those are the Thuringian style, which you were just talking about. Those are massive. But then also when you and I dined actually in Würzburg, I also had dumplings, and that was a very different, presentation and style as well too. Very specific to the region. So you can take the overall concept of dumplings, but each city, they are prepared in a very, very different way. And then also interesting, which I really enjoyed discovering a bit more with you. Again, we all know of Germany for its beer, and there's so much beer, but there's also incredible wines there. And for me to get to discover some of the Franconian wines, that was a really, really cool experience. Like, something that you know one thing, but then to dive into a little bit more of it was really cool to experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as you said, it's like beer, but then there is so much more as well. It's like, and then beer is not like beer. It tastes different in every city, in every region. You probably also saw when you were in Erfurt that they drink a lot of dark beer, while if you are more south, it gets a little bit lighter. But of course, they do have the dark beer too, but they usually drink it during Lent, during winter time. But in Erfurt, for example, they drink it all year round. And then if you go more into the southwestern part, which is from a city you probably know, Cologne, Aachen area, down to the Moselle region where my hometown Trier is, to southwest Germany, and then as you already talked about, Franconia region in Upper Bavaria, in Northern Bavaria, and then we have another small but also very good wine region in Thuringia and Saxony. Up there. So we have 13 wine growing regions in Germany, and 13 of them with totally different styles of wine, kinds of wine. For the famous Riesling that most of the people know, it's usually produced on the Moselle River where I'm living, and so it's just also a different flair when you just drive along or walk along or take a river cruise along the Moselle River and see all these vineyards on the slopes of the Moselle River. It's just beautiful.
It's incredible. That is actually going to be one of my next things that I have after visiting Heidelberg. I have to do actual proper river cruise as well too, because I know that that's an incredible way to see so many different destinations. So for those that might be planning a trip to Germany soon, Why? I mean, I know why because I think Travis, but why should your cities be at the top of their list? And would you say that they, they sort of complement maybe a visit to some of the larger cities in the country?
They do. And as I already talked about Augsburg, which is very close to Munich. So if you like the hustle and bustle of a big city, but in the evening you want to take it a little bit slower, I think like Augsburg or Potsdam, which is very just outside of Berlin, we usually call it the Beverly Hills of Berlin because it has all this beautiful flair and these beautiful houses and the 20 palace-like buildings there. Or just Aachen, which is also just an hour away from Cologne, or Wiesbaden, which is just half an hour outside of Frankfurt, and which is also very close to Frankfurt Airport. So, and which is usually the hub for Germany, flying from the States to Germany. Usually most, like, I think 75-80% of the flights land in Frankfurt. So there are cities that are very close by to bigger destinations, like Munich, Berlin, Frankfurt, and so on, which you can sleep at and experience this beautiful smaller city. But then also, if you want to visit it and it's on your bucket list, do the big one too. And I think that's a very nice combination too, that you have the smaller ones where you can experience German culture, German local culture, and then you have the bigger ones if you want the buzz and hustle of a bigger city too. So I think that's a good combination.
It is. And, I want to actually add, for those that are listening, what's really great is that for historic highlights, they really are year-round destinations.
Oh, yeah,
so
they are.
whether you're looking for Christmas markets in the winter, or maybe even the cherry blossoms in the spring, Easter celebrations, summer, fall festivals, there is a lot going on. And, pretty much whenever you might find yourself planning a trip to Germany, there is something. And I think that all of these destinations have something to lend to that. So, and because they are located in different parts of the country,
right,
one, has its own sort of seasonal flair, depending on what season it is.
Right, it is, and then again, if you like beer, going back to beer again, and want to go to Oktoberfest or have been to Oktoberfest, there are so many beer festivals around Germany that take place even already in March. So, and April, and we probably start in March, April with the first beer festivals, and then usually really end with Oktoberfest, which is the last big one that everybody knows. But for example, in the three Bavarian cities that I represent as well, like Würzburg, Regensburg, and Augsburg, there are two beer festivals a year. So and they are very local, and you get local food, local colors, local flavors, and all that. It's just so beautiful to be at a beer festival that isn't crowded with tourists. Yeah. Let's put it that way. Yes. No, I get it. to really meet the locals there as well. And I think that's also something special about my destinations, that they are not too touristy. You still can find the local communities, and it's just beautiful.
I love that, and I couldn't agree more. So I think this is kind of a great sort of segue into wrapping up today's discussion. But you mentioned this at the beginning, the train system, and a lot of us, for those that have maybe haven't experienced yet, I mean, the train system in Germany is famous. I mean, they are on time, it is efficient, it is a great way to get around. And I have to say, during my last trip, I finally got to experience it, and I have to say, it made getting around so easy. And I was just, I mean, just to be able to just get around the country, I didn't have to worry about renting a car. I didn't have to worry about driving and figuring out signs and having, maps. And it also was a really interesting way to see locals and how locals were traveling as well. So would love to hear from you, if you could share some advice maybe for travelers. What is the best way to get around? Is it the train system? And any maybe final thoughts on what travelers should consider when planning a trip to Germany?
Sure. Yeah. Taking the train usually is the way to go, and that also ties into the idea of meaningful travel. Being able also, if you say meaningful travel, again, for myself, being able to relax during the vacation time, what you usually want to do. I think it's easy to go by train because you can just sit there, relax, see the scenery passing by, because when you're on the Autobahn, people just
Yes.
Overtake you all the time and all this, and you really can't enjoy the German countryside, which is also so beautiful. Although I have to say, maybe sometimes and then going back to the ancestry part of it, sometimes you are from a really, really small city or town or village where your forefathers are from, and then you might want to take a car, because sometimes it's especially for the very, very, very small destinations. Not mine are big enough to be connected to the high-speed rail network. So it's easy to get from one destination to other of mine by high-speed rail network, the famous ICE, Ice Baby, right?
Yes, Ice Baby.
And so it's take the train. I think that's a very easy part of it. And they have the German rail pass, where you don't have to worry buying tickets. You just buy it once, and it's valid for an amount of time that you buy it. And so, taking the train, I think, is the way to go, and it's really reliable. And also, if you are thinking about conscious travel, thinking about yourself and being able to do something good and something that doesn't harm the environment, go by train, because the train in Germany, it's powered by 100% renewable energy. Is that the right word? Yeah, I think so.
Yes, that's right. And I will say, for those that might be considering it as well too, it's to for example, I would say try and do the first class experience, because if you plan in advance, it's actually not that much more expensive. It's obviously, if you're booking stuff last minute, that's a little bit of a different scenario for anything in travel. But if you plan in advance, you can get some very reasonable first class tickets, and it makes the travel experience not only more comfortable, but it is very affordable as well too. So that is something to keep in mind, and good for the environment.
And it is. It definitely is. And then you do have much more space, because you usually, when you are coming from the States, you have a bigger luggage with you, a bigger bag with you. And in first class, you do have the space. you do have the space, and you get served food and drinks that you can buy at your seat. So you don't even have to go to the board bistro, that we call it. So people come to you, and it's just a great way to experience Germany and travel through Germany.
It really is. It really is. And I have to say that for me rounded out the experience, because not only was I, exploring and living and breathing Germany and all the different cities, but as I was going from city to city, I was sitting next to Germans. I was completely immersed in it. And it really made it a very, very different and meaningful travel experience for me. So I definitely agree with you on that. So with that being said, Sascha, thank you so much for your time. It's always great chatting with you. But for those that are just tuning in and wanting to find out maybe more, where can they find out more information on the cities that you represent?
You can, and then again, okay, let's do this first. It's historicgermany.travel, where you can find all these destinations. It's historicgermany.travel or historicgermany.com, depending on what you prefer. Both lead to the same website. And I also want to thank you, Sarah, for all of this. You've been such a great person, such a great traveler within Germany. It's just amazing to work with you too.
Oh, likewise. Well, I have to say, I am counting down the days until I can go back to Germany, and I will certainly.
Yes, and you will,
And I will be adding a few more of your cities to my list, because that really it changed my whole perception of Germany. And so thank you for that as well.
And again, just put big cities. I know they are on the bucket list of everyone, going to Berlin, going to Munich, and that's totally fine. But then I will also say, just include one or two smaller destinations to just see what Germany is much more about than just these bigger destinations. And I think that's the whole magic that can happen in Germany.
I couldn't agree anymore. I definitely, and that's certainly how I'm going to be planning my future trips going ahead. So there you have it. You can, find out more information. And Sascha, this has been a wonderful conversation. So until next time.
Yeah, until next time. Thank you so much, Sarah. It was wonderful.
Oh, lovely. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.